and welcome to SEC Sports Roundtable. I'm your host, Shane Bailey. Got a short staff here today. A couple things have hopped in the way, but we are happy to have Jon Schultz here to join us. How have you been?
Well, I've been good. Good to be back.
It's been a while, so thanks for joining us.
No problem.
Glad to have you here. We'll cover some housekeeping things, get those out of the way at the beginning. We try to do that so you can listen to the rest of the podcast without a lot of interruptions. But just wanted to take a couple minutes to go over some of the ways that you can find us. SECSportsRoundtable.com, that's our website. You can also find that at SECSRT.com. We are on Facebook at SECSRT. That's also our Twitter handle, SECSRT. A couple ways that you can listen to this podcast is on iTunes. We'd love for you guys, if you're out there listening to this on a weekly basis, go out there and just tell us what you think. Give us some positive ratings out there. We'd love to get us up a little bit higher. Last time we looked, as far as our searches, we were definitely way up on the first page of a search. If you did SEC Sports, just a general SEC Sports search on iTunes in the podcast category, we were way up there in the top. So we'd love to get up in the top 2 or 3, and it really wouldn't be that difficult to do that. And iTunes is crazy about how they judge those things. So if we could get some positive feedback on that would be wonderful. That also just lets us know what you guys think of what we're doing every week here at the podcast. Then we're also on Stitcher Radio. That's an app that's on the iPhone as well as Android devices, an easy way to stream and listen to our podcasts, as well as on our Facebook page itself. You can actually listen to the podcasts directly from Facebook. Just go to SECSRT, do a search for us, SEC Sports Roundtable in Facebook, and then you'll see in our timeline an easy way to just click and play and listen to our podcast as we do that. You can comment if you just want to just tell us what you think and don't want to go to those things. You can go to comments at SEC Sports Roundtable. That's another easy way for you to communicate with us as well. The website itself should be under some new refresh stuff coming up in the next month or so. An easier way for you guys to become involved and engaged in the website. We're going to be able to have some comments and things directly on the website there. So hopefully look for those in the next coming weeks to month on the website itself. So we're trying to get you guys more involved with us as the March Madness starts to roll around. We're just around the corner from that. We're going to be able to do some live blogging. I know if you watched our football, we did a couple of live blogs during the bowl season and had some success with that and enjoyed that. So as March Madness comes rolling around and the SEC tournament hits in March, we're going to try to get a few live blogs out of some of those basketball games as well. So be on the lookout. Easiest way to find out is just our Facebook and Twitter. We're going to be able to update you when we're doing those and what games we'll do. So we'd love for you to join our conversation and just be involved with the Sports Roundtable. Your feedback becomes important to us, and that's a great way. By you becoming involved and involved with what we do, that helps us know which way to take this thing. So enough for the housekeeping. Let's start talking some sports. What do you think, Jon?
Let's do it.
All right. We'll cover some football. I know we did some signing day stuff a few weeks ago. National Signing Day was 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago now. But since then, a couple of things have been announced, and that's our Pro Day. Pro Days have been announced as far as the colleges hosting Pro Day events at their campuses, as well as the Combines. So the Combine invites have been out as well. And you want to kick us off with a little of that, Jon?
Sure. I know for a fact that, Tennessee, I'm a big Tennessee fan. So I know that they got a couple of invites. They got to the Combine. They got Torian Poole and Malik Jackson will be representing Tennessee. And I know former Vol Jansen Jackson, who plays at McNeese State now, he also got invited. Other than that, I know probably about a third of Alabama's senior class probably got invited, about the whole team.
Yeah, Tennessee just had 2 players. I think that's all Kentucky had as well when you go looking at it. As we've said on past podcasts, if you're new to this podcast, a little bit about the format before we get too far into it. We're not afraid to tell you who we root for and who we care about. This is not a unbiased panel by any stretch of the imagination, so you're definitely going to know where we land as far as our loyalties lie. But Winston Guy and Danny Trevathan were the two Kentucky players that were invited to the combine. But like you said, Alabama, we'll count them up here. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Think about nine
players. So you've got 22 starting positions. I guess 24 if you count a kicker and a punter. So 9 out of 24 players were invited to the NFL Combine, and that just is. That's not counting some of those players were on Alabama's offense and defense that were not juniors and seniors and eligible to go for the NFL draft. So that's ridiculous kind of numbers there for Alabama.
I mean, if you look at it, I mean, the defensive players that they're leaving, I mean, it's crazy. Hightower is gone. Kirkpatrick is gone. Upshaw. I mean, they're going to be – and the sick thing is they'll be reloaded next year.
Yeah, and on the offensive side, you've got Marquise Mays and Trent Richardson also going for Alabama. Arkansas had 1 or 2 notable players. Joe Adams is going into the Combine with an invite, and so has Jake Burkett. So we're also going to look at another team that had a number of invites, and that's going to be LSU. And Georgia, if you looked at them, I don't know did you notice how many they had? For a team that, at the beginning of the season was, having a coach that possibly might not be there, they've got about 8 or 9 invited as well. So,
well, Orson Charles I know is one, and then their kicker's going also.
8. Georgia has 8 players. So
Blair Walsh.
It's ridiculous how many players actually go out from the SEC in general. LSU's got 8 players. So Alabama looks like it's leading the way with 9. And if you looked at all of Division I bet that's probably the most for any program out there. So just a crazy amount of players and talent that comes from the SEC is headed to the NFL draft. And what's the funny thing about it, or what's crazy, is we're going to have that same conversation again next year.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, when it comes down to it, person for person, the talent level at the SEC, it's just head and shoulders above some of the other programs out there in conferences, and it's just a reloading process for them. And you're going to see Alabama be Alabama next year. You're going to see LSU be LSU next year, and reload and have the same amount of talent again. And when we have the same conversation come February of 2013, we're going to talk about the same type of potential from the SEC headed in the draft. It's just crazy.
It's also going to be interesting to me, to see what Missouri and Texas A&M bring, because I'm sure that those each have a couple players that are, going to be up in the draft next year. I think, what does Missouri have, like 5 or 6?
Well, it looks like Missouri's got 4, and then Texas A&M will run down there real quick. Good thing about being in alphabetical order.
They got 5. 6.
So, it's the middle of the road. When you look at, like you said, Tennessee had 2, Kentucky had 2, Arkansas had 1 or 2. Mm-hmm. That just shows the talent that's actually coming in the SEC. Texas A&M and Missouri, both are bringing more in. What did Vanderbilt bring?
And I think that one thing to talk about too is look at a team like Tennessee. They have 2 this year. What's going to happen once Dooley's senior class goes through? He should have a good 5 to 6, 7 players go. I mean, it's just the SEC gets harder and harder. Texas A&M, like I said, they're going to start recruiting probably more heavily in Texas. They'll start bringing over some more people. I mean, you could look at the average of these teams. It might be 4 to 7 players are going to go on average in the next couple of years. It's not even fair. I mean, I don't know how many Ohio State had, but even Mississippi State, we're looking right here. 4. They had 4.
Mississippi had 2. Ole Miss had 2. So if you were ranking on Missouri and Texas A&M is going to be way up there as far as the depth chart, as far as the amount of talent they're putting into the NFL from the SEC as well. So anything else you want to talk about as far as football before we go over to the basketball program?
I think we're ready to go.
All right. What we're looking at here is it's kind of a slow period for talk. There's not a whole lot of news. This is really the only big news that's announced. If you want to go look, I'm not a big person on pro days and to keep up with what's going on there, but all those schedules are announced, and I don't know why it's such a big deal that people are leaking when their college is going to have their actual pro day. So, but those are out there too. They've been announced and are are available. We're not going to cover that. That's just not news to me. So if it's not news to me, it might be news to you. I apologize, but that's just irrelevant information. But as far as the news goes, before I went off on that tangent there is some news in the basketball world, and that kind of really put a bubble team, or a team that in most people's brackets, if you were doing bracketology, had a team already implanted and in the tournament was Alabama. And this week they've been hit with suspensions and suspensions. Did I get 4 there?
Yeah, you did.
All right. It started off the week, I guess Tuesday. Was that when Tony Mitchell was suspended?
I think, yeah, it was either Monday or Tuesday of last week.
Or
this past week.
That's one player, understandably a big score for Alabama. It's going to affect them. But then Saturday morning, just before their game against LSU, we learned that 3 more players were suspended. As of, this podcast on Sunday, we do not know how long the suspension is going to be. But, a graduate assistant packs them up and drives them home in a van right before the game. They don't even get to stay with the team during that game for their suspension. That's got to be pretty serious stuff.
It is, and the thing about it is that they're so close. It's like you just said, they're a bubble team. They just lost 3 of their probably top 5 scorers easily. I mean, I know in this past 3 with Steele, Green, and Relaford, I saw a stat on it the other day. It was something like in the neighborhood of about 26 points a game. I just think that basically at this time in the season, I mean, if things like that happen to your team, I just don't really find any way that they're going to get into the tournament now. I know that they have I think that they play, what did they say, Vandy one more time?
Yeah, we'll pull them up real quick. Alabama has a number, and what's really going to depend for Alabama is how long is this suspension for the other 3 players? Was this just a 1-game suspension? Because like you said, they turn around this Tuesday and they play Florida at Alabama. They've got Tennessee Saturday.
And then they go to at Arkansas.
So those are 3, and then Mississippi State. The road for Alabama to be really supplanted in the brackets is not the only 2 games really that they have out of the last 6 is they finish with Auburn and Auburn and Ole Miss, and both of those games should be victories. If you were looking at the stat sheet, even against the way they played LSU, Auburn at home at Alabama, they should have a good chance there. By that last game against Ole Miss, they're going to be out of it.
That's what I would say.
We're looking at them as one of the first 4 out right now through the bracketology on CBS. And if you look at their schedule, it doesn't get any easier for Ole Miss. So, I guess 3 weeks ago, we were looking at this, and Blair Smiley, who rightfully said that, Ole Miss is getting ready to get to the brunt of their season, and it's going to start to get more difficult. You saw them from being 6 teams in the SEC in the tournament, now to 5 with one of them out, one of the first 4 out, to basically 4 more. We're going to lose 2 teams out of that 6 that are going to go, because Ole Miss has Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Tennessee at Tennessee, then Arkansas at Arkansas. That's 4 big matches that they have to win. Their overall record, if you want to look at that, was that struggling. If I can pull it up, I'll pull it up real fast here. The 2-10 overall in the SEC. It's basically a coffin in the nail for them, or a nail in the coffin. In Alabama, they were doing really. What am I looking at? I'm sorry. That looks much better. That just didn't seem right. So Ole Miss is 5-5 in the SEC and 15-9 overall. That you have to get to 20 wins basically in the SEC. You don't see 5 more wins on that schedule we were just looking at.
No, and I mean, we talked about this earlier too. I think that there's a solid 4 teams that we can say are pretty much assured to be in.
Yeah,
from the SEC.
Definitely.
Now, I think that you have another 4 on the bubble. And you can almost take out Alabama. I mean, you can almost take them out, and you can almost take out Ole Miss. So you're really looking at 6. You're looking at 4 in and about 2 that are on the bubble. Arkansas is going to have to get a couple of big wins down the stretch. They don't have an easy schedule, and Tennessee basically needs to win out. I mean, that's the only way they're going to get in. If they win out, they'll be at 19 wins. You probably have to win 1 or 2 in the SEC tournament. I just, being a Tennessee fan, that's wishful thinking. I don't know if it's going to happen. I think I could see the SEC, just getting in those 4 that we talked about, the Kentucky, Florida, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt.
Yeah, we were looking at this beforehand, and I know you'd like to see Tennessee. They're sitting there overall with, 13 wins?
Yeah, I think they're 13 and 12 now.
And they've got 6 more games left. It's just going to be really hard pressed for them to win out because they're going to play Arkansas, Alabama, which, depending on their suspensions, could go either way.
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss, you should be able to beat Ole Miss. South Carolina, you should be able to take care of. You should be able to take care of LSU. There's 3. Tennessee's got Vanderbilt at Tennessee. I don't know if you can beat them. So that at best would have you at 19 wins. That means you're going to have to pull off wins against Arkansas and Alabama. You're going to have to win. What have you won? 3 in a row? Is that what we?
Yeah.
So you're going to have to win. Basically
be like
8 in a row.
Yeah.
Which I guess it can be done. That's going to have to be a big run for you guys, and you'd have to win a couple games in the tournament because with that, I would put you if you get 5 more wins in the SEC, it's going to put Tennessee at 10 and 6, which probably get them 5th or 6th. So you're not going to have a bye.
No. I mean, I think the only thing that you're going to have to look at for Tennessee is if we win out, or if we do, maybe we win 5 of the last 6 games and then win a couple games in the tournament, is how the selection committee is going to look at us. We have such a different record pre-Jarnell Stokes and post-Jarnell Stokes. It's going to kind of be up to them to see how they look at it. But like I said, wishful thinking we're in. Everything would just pretty much have to go perfectly.
Well, I bet I think realistically you guys are an NIT team. You came on and improved just a little too late.
Yeah.
In the season, but every game that you saw Tennessee, and I've talked about this, as much as I dislike Tennessee, I told everyone in December that Tennessee is not a team I wanted to see Kentucky face late in February. I'm so glad that the way the schedule worked out for Kentucky was that we had Tennessee at Thompson Bowling in early January, and then we had them at Rupp Arena in late January. Yeah. Because it would be a completely different story if the Florida-Tennessee were flip-flopped on Kentucky's schedule. We just played Florida this week as far as Kentucky did, and they play them the last game of the season. That's not the way I'd want to see Tennessee. I'm seeing them improving overall. I'm not seeing that with Florida. I'm seeing them hitting some sort of plateau. Florida is as far as their talent level. They've lost back-to-back games this week. So it's not the same Florida team that you were looking at a week and a half ago. You were sitting here looking at them being able to contend possibly against Kentucky, sitting there with just 1 loss, having to face Kentucky. Kentucky goes down to the O-Dome and takes care of Florida handedly. It wasn't an easy. It wasn't just a close victory. It was a pretty handedly victory for Kentucky coming down to Florida. Then they turn around and they lose to Tennessee this yesterday.
Yeah.
And that was at Florida as well.
It was at Florida, yeah. So
they've had a tough go of it, a tough little hiccup here in their giddy-up, we'll say. But they're still, I think, decidedly the number 2 team in the SEC. Vanderbilt, as much as I wanted to say they deserve to be, they just don't.
The Vanderbilt's just so up and down. I mean, you look at them, some games, it's like they win the games they're supposed to, and then against the teams that they struggle, they normally struggle against, like yesterday against Kentucky, they just got pretty much dominated the entire time. I mean, it really wasn't close. The final score, might have appeared that way, but I just think they got physically dominated. I mean, Kentucky was just better all over. I mean, Davis was a beast down low. They didn't, especially on that, when he blocked the last shot of the game. I just don't think Vanderbilt really. I mean, the score might have said differently, but they just really got dominated.
That I would say if you watch the first half, I would agree with that. But Kentucky came out looking a little flat in to start the second half. I don't remember the exact run, but I think at one time they went on a 12-2 run. Vanderbilt did to really bring that game back and be close. And Kentucky struggled. Terrence Jones at the beginning of the game wasn't the Terrence Jones that we've been seeing the last few games. Coach Cal definitely wasn't afraid to pull the trigger and set him on the bench. I think he sat 6 minutes straight in the first half. Now, after that, he learned his lesson and came back. It wasn't a repeat performance of Indiana. He learned his lesson, came back out, and was definitely a force. I think he ended up with 4 or 5 blocks to Davis's 7 million, but still he definitely helped out and came out with some solid scoring. But Kentucky struggled at times there. They got into a little foul trouble. What was nice to see was that Kentucky had the depth, and that's what I've been talking about all year, is that Kentucky, the team that I see this year, needs to have more depth than they have in past, and it's really starting to be seen that you have a true 7th player that can come in with Wilcher to step in and give you some great quality minutes that can be effective and can score some points, get some rebounds. He's not going to block shots or anything like that, but you have that 7th player. And at the beginning of the season, that was going to be Vargas, and Wilcher's proven that he deserves that playing time more than Vargas does. So what you've done is you've supplanted that, and you've given yourself some depth on that bench so that when you do run into foul trouble, like they did yesterday against Vandy, forgot who all got, but there was 3 or 4 players that ended up with 4 fouls. That what happens is you've got somebody that can come in and give you good quality minutes. One of the stats that amazes me, and I was looking at this, and again, I'm going to give more props to Blair Smiley. He brought this stat up to me to the podcast a few weeks ago, and he was talking about more about his players. If you look at the total minutes played in the SEC, the players that are leading the conference right now, 3 players are from Mississippi State. DeBoss, Rodney Hood, and Moultrie. You have to go down, all the way to the what position? 8th position in the rankings to get to a Kentucky player. And if you were to guess, I would have never guessed it would have been Marcus Teague.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I think Davis, I'm not really sure. I think Davis may be up in the top, somewhere in the top. Is he? How many minutes a game is he averaging?
Well, he's not in the top 10.
Oh, okay. Minutes played. Okay, that kind of surprises me. Yeah, really, because I was thinking about that earlier. I actually wrote that down, but I think that really Kentucky, it's going to be interesting to see what happens to them in the tournament, because when they play a team that presses a lot, is Teague? Do you think Teague's going to be able to handle that pressure? And here it's kind of interesting to see that he has played the most minutes. I would have, of all the players, I would have never have guessed that.
Yeah, if you would have taken a straw poll and said, hey, who in the Kentucky team is going to have the most minutes?
Yeah.
Marcus Teague would not have been my choice.
Yeah, see, I would have said Davis.
Yeah. I would have probably said Davis or Miller. But he's coming off the bench. Jones, he gets set for long periods of time. So, it does make sense when you look at it. But what that really shows to me, and what I'm surprised at by that stat, is that the balance Kentucky has in their playing minutes, and that it's become more spread out, and that you're getting more playing time from that 6th and 7th player to take those total minutes away from those guys, so that you run into those situations like we've talked about before. Brett Young is consistently talked about the fact that it's not a matter of losing your legs in these games with a TV timeout every 4 minutes and 5 timeouts in the game. You're going to get plenty of rest, and you shouldn't be that tired. But where it comes into play is when you start looking at teams that get in foul trouble or you have an injury. And if if you're a Mississippi State and you rely on that, that's all of a sudden you lose that depth, and you have that cushion's gone away, so to speak. But Kentucky, miraculously, I would have never imagined that it would have been so evenly matched, because that's the one thing that I've preached about, and to me that's been Kentucky's Achilles heel, is that Cal has played his 6 players at most, and he didn't have that depth on that bench. That one extra player is going to provide all the difference in the world here. We saw that yesterday with Vanderbilt. It let Vanderbilt get close. Kentucky made some mistakes to allow them to do that. But what it did show was that, the depth and maturity by having that extra player, getting those minutes throughout the year has really, really helped Kentucky. And that's the difference for me in this team and the teams, Cal's other two teams in the past couple of years. And that, to me, might be the difference in a national championship.
They're just, not only that, they're just really athletic. But I really worry about a team that's older that they play against that presses them and really, there's a lot of that plays maybe 3 guards. Listen, any team's going to have trouble with them down low. Nobody's going to stop Davis. On either end, really.
You say that, but, you look at some of the top teams. North Carolina, they took care of it. It was a 1-point victory for Kentucky. Vanderbilt, if you're talking about, I don't think there's going to be a team in the tournament that's going to have more experience than Vanderbilt this year. Yesterday they started 4 seniors and a junior. You're not going to find that kind of depth on an NCAA team anymore. So you're going to have if you're talking about experience, that's going to be the most experienced team. Not to mention that Vanderbilt has seen Kentucky. They see them 2 times a year, sometimes 3 if it's in the tournament. They get to see them in the SEC tournament. They know how Kentucky plays. They're gonna know them better than anybody. And a team that preseason was top 5, top 6 in the country, to not be able to handle and stay with Kentucky at Memorial Gym, and that's a hard place to play.
Like I just said, but if I think your best strategy against Kentucky would be something like where you're running you're a good shooting team from the outside, and you have a lot of quality guards that can pressure the ball. I think that's really how you got to create turnovers, and you have to be able to shoot the ball because, like I said, you're not going to do much down low no matter who you have.
No, you're right. But you're talking about perimeter play, and Vanderbilt led the conference in points scored with Jenkins being the top scorer in the SEC, and he does that from 3-point range. He's over 40%.
Jenkins isn't that good of a defender, though. That's what I'm saying. You need, if a team can shoot and defend, because obviously just me personally, I understand a team obviously like UNC and like Kentucky are ranked high, but it's what scares me about that would be one of those teams that is maybe in a smaller conference or something, just has a lot of guard play that they just shoot the ball and they play defense. That's what would worry me a little bit. No, I'm not saying that. Obviously Kentucky is the most athletic team in the country by far. It's not even close.
Yeah.
But if you just get a team that is going to put a lot of pressure on Teague, he's a freshman. Who else would you say handles the ball the most? Gilchrist. Lamb.
I would say Lamb.
They're all pretty young, so I could just see that. I'm not saying that they're gonna, they're not gonna. Some of those games they're gonna blow them out, but I would be worried if I had to play a team that really had some strong guards that really, could defend the ball some length, and could shoot. Because like I said, obviously Davis has proven that you're not gonna get many points in the lane.
Yeah, no, yeah, and matchups are still gonna be key. That was Kentucky's Achilles heel. Aside from the depth that they were missing in the tournament, the last 2 years when they got put out, if you look at it, it was truly a matchup issue that put them out. It wasn't that other team was better than Kentucky necessarily. It was they matched up better than Kentucky did, and Kentucky wasn't ready for that.
Yeah.
Mississippi State's another team, though. We're talking about teams that are supplanted and have a chance to go to the tournament. They're 6-4, and they've just had some crazy losses. I know they lost to Ole Miss earlier in the season. They lost again this week to somebody. Who did they play?
Well, I know they beat. They also beat Ole Miss, right?
Yeah.
That was
Georgia.
Yesterday.
At the hump. Mississippi State has such a home court advantage there at the hump. That's a hard place to play, and for Georgia to come in, another team that we're not giving any props to go tournament time. To come in there and they're 3-7 to come into the hump, and for Mississippi State to lose, that's a team that I'm sorry, Blair, but you just don't know what you're going to get every day. And I know you're confident that Kentucky's going to come in there and suffer a loss down there at the hump, but you just don't know what you get with Mississippi State right now, and it's kind of like their football program. You like to see them do well, but you just don't know what. It's a Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing with them.
Yeah, to come out Tuesday or Wednesday night, they just dominated Ole Miss, and then they just turn around and just get beat by Georgia. I kind of agree with you on that thing. Obviously, I think that we both agree that they're still going to make it to the tournament. But you're right. I mean, maybe they get it together, maybe they don't. But I just don't see how you absolutely just dominate Ole Miss and then come back and take an L to Georgia at home.
Yeah, and
they look good too. I mean, they kept throwing alley oops. I mean, they were really just dominating them.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. When Mississippi State's on their game, they're going to be a very, very tough team to beat. But you don't know what team's going to show up on the floor anymore. Another team, and I know we can't see East and West anymore. It's all one division. But we all still know who's out in the West. And Arkansas, even though they're 5-5 and in middle of the pack in the SEC, they're a couple wins away from being in the conversation tournament time with 17 wins overall. Their schedule actually is pretty favorable. I mean, I'm just thinking about how we've talked about them in some of the other matchups. They've got they're playing at Tennessee next, and they can beat them.
Yes.
Now the problem with Arkansas is they've had a problem winning on the road, but they changed that this week and won yesterday on the road, and in a game that they really, if you were it's South Carolina, so you should expect them to win. But they turn around and they play Tennessee at Thompson Bowling, so they go to Tennessee. Then they have Florida at Arkansas.
Yeah.
And aside from that one hiccup, I think they've been perfect at home this year. So that's a tough place to play. Then Alabama comes to Arkansas. Then they go to Auburn. And then they have Ole Miss and Mississippi State. So, realistically here, they could win 5 or 6 of those. What do they got? They got 6 games. They could easily win 4 or 5 of those matchups. And that's going to put them at 22, maybe 23 wins.
Yeah.
And if you win a game or two in the tournament, all of a sudden, I think they're in the conversation, and you've not heard that before. And I think they might take the place of that Alabama and Ole Miss, and that might be our 5th team from the SEC. Unless Alabama gets their suspensions back and they're short, they can pull off a few good quality wins here late. What else you got?
Well, I think we talked about it. It's just going to be interesting. We didn't really elaborate on Vandy too much. I think we kind of talked about them being a little bit up and down. But, they're another team. I mean, I kind of think that it's so weird with them. You don't ever know what you're really going to get. I mean, they have the talent to dominate. They really do.
I agree. And if you watched the game yesterday, the announcers kept talking about how Vanderbilt was finally healthy. And I know they've battled some injuries, but it's knees and legs and stuff aside from Festus Ezeli. Some of that stuff still don't know what you're going to get with Vanderbilt, and whether they're healthy or not, that's their issue. Is it going to be the same Vanderbilt team we've seen for the last, I don't know how long history's repeated itself, where they go to the tournament and they lose in the first round?
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right, and the thing about it is you have Festus and you have Taylor, and sometimes Jenkins plays, but the thing with Jenkins is he is just not good on defense. I mean, it's going to be hard for him in the tournament. There's going to be taller guards. I mean, they should be okay down low in the post. I just don't know if they can score. Don't get me wrong. John Jenkins is a great scorer, great shooter, but I just think his defense is just something that's always going to be hurting them.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. I mean, he can light it up when he's out there behind the arc, but when he's got to play defense, you don't necessarily know what you're going to get.
Yeah. And what happens when a team gets Festus in foul trouble?
Chingling.
Yeah.
I mean, is he going to be your answer off the bench? He hasn't been the answer off the bench so far. And what's really hurting Vanderbilt now is some of those losses earlier in the season. Before Ezeli was truly healthy, he had those suspensions where they had a loss or two, and then another loss because I think he had a loss before he was suspended, then a loss while he was injured. But if you take some of those that they should have realistically won and put them in the win column, they're currently somewhere 7, 8 seed. would they not be a 4 or 5 seed?
I would have to say so, yeah.
And the difference between, when you start looking at the brackets and start to play as a 7 seed versus a 5 seed or a 4 seed, it's a totally different ballgame. You don't know what you're going to get. Was it 4-12?
Yeah.
Or a 7-8? What would you rather be up against? And that's where Vanderbilt's really putting themselves in a situation this year again where they could be one and done in the tournament. And you really don't want to see that for Vanderbilt, but that's the way that's the kind of the corner they've backed themselves into.
It's kind of odd with them how they, every year it just seems like that first round game just gets them. I mean, it's an interesting thing because he recruits pretty well and they play pretty well during the regular season, but I think there's going to come a time where if Stallings does not start winning in the tournament, I mean, I hate to say it, I don't know who they would go get. He's a great coach, but you got to show some wins in the postseason.
I want to say that you're right there, but Vanderbilt, even though they're not complacent with going to the tournament and losing, they're not going to find anyone better to come coach at Vanderbilt. One advantage that Vanderbilt has in basketball is that it's a lot easier to fill out a team with just a couple of players, because they have more stringent grade restrictions and score restrictions as far as ACTs and SATs to get players eligible. So it takes a little bit less, but you're still in a smaller pool searching for that talent. So that's always going to be a difficult challenge for Vanderbilt, whether it's football, it's basketball, even baseball for that matter. It's just harder for Vanderbilt to have to go out and recruit against teams that have easier admission policies as far as who they can take and what students are allowed to come. And Stallings has done a tremendous job there, and I don't realistically see them being able to do anything better than Stallings.
Yeah, but I mean, how many years in a row are you going to continue to make the postseason and not win again? And who knows, maybe this year they break through, they start playing all amazing, and, they win 2-3 games in the tournament.
They're capable of it.
For sure.
They are. It's just we've not seen that Vanderbilt program yet. And, we talk about how, Stallings talked about at the beginning of the season, if you heard any of the interviews, how well this team plays together. And at times you see that breaking apart. You need to get a different Vanderbilt program in there to come in and play like you expect them to play. I mean, when you look at a Vanderbilt program and you look at them preseason, I think they were ranked 6th. I'm going from memory here.
They were in the top 10 for sure.
Top 10 for sure, and I'm thinking somewhere around 6, maybe 7, some polls. But now, they're not even in the top 25. And sitting there with 8 losses, if you were to poll me at the beginning of the season, I would have said maybe 5 for the whole season, and there still might be another loss in Vanderbilt's. Well, they've got to come to Kentucky, so there's going to be another loss in Vanderbilt's win-loss columns by the end of the season. So, it's funny to see what we're going to do Vanderbilt. So realistically, after we've talked this all through, it looks like to me I must be an Arkansas homer at heart because I see where Arkansas can now sneak up there and be a 5th team. Alabama, it's really going to come down to how long these suspensions are, how is that going to affect their team afterwards and for the long period of time here, the next couple weeks. How does that affect the team and their morale? It looks like the freshmen really stepped up and played hard against LSU. I think they were from down 12 points at one time. Yeah. I mean, they were down even more than that maybe at one time, but I think they went on a 12-0 run to start the second half to bring them within, I think, 3 points at one time to actually make that a ball game. And yes, it's LSU, but when you're down 4 starters on a program like Alabama that's at best middle of the pack anyways, that's got to be tough no matter who you're playing. For them to come in and play as hard as they did with the players that they had, if they can get some pieces back from that suspension, there might be a 6th team sitting there from the SEC.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. And I think, a lot of this is going to have to do, too, with the SEC tournament. I think that, any of these teams can go on a run. I mean, like I said, we obviously have the 4 that are probably going to get in.
Oh yeah.
But you never know. I mean, let's say Arkansas just goes on a huge run and they win the SEC tournament. Well, then that's your 15.
How come you didn't say Tennessee?
Well, it's like,
It's possible, though.
It is. Any team is possible. I just picked somebody off the sheet, but I didn't want to say Alabama, obviously. But you never know what happens if Tennessee. It's like you said. What happens if Tennessee goes on a run? They just start playing as a team. Everybody, gets back and they win the tournament. Then you're talking about a fifth team. And I think some other local teams just kind of getting a little bit off topic, but like Austin Peay. What happens if they lost one game? What happens if they lose in the finals of their conference tournament? That's another team from their conference that would sneak in. You'd have to assume that they would get in too. So you don't know how the numbers crunch is going to be. The Big East is a little down this year, but you never know how it's always going to work out in the end.
You say that the Big East has got 8. That's half.
Right now. How many are in the top 25 right now?
I don't know how many are ranked in the top 25.
Because I know Louisville, for instance, is they're like 23.
And they've gone on a tear here recently.
Yeah.
Just winning some. But they've got Syracuse this week, so that's going to be a tough matchup for Louisville. The team that's got the most right now as far as bracketology is the Big Ten, and they've got 9 teams that are forecasted to make the tournament, and some of those teams like Indiana, who's had a rough spell the last few weeks, they could end up falling out, and that could drop down to 7 or 8. So that's where you're going to see some spots. It's somewhere like the Big Ten. If you see some more losses happen in that division over the next few weeks from some of those teams, and it's going to happen because with 9 teams targeted to be there, they're each going to have to play each other at some point. There's only 12 teams, so there's some more losses with 3 more weeks of basketball, 6 more games for most, 5 or 6 more games for most teams before their tournament.
Yeah.
You're going to see a couple more losses on those teams, and that can really change the weighting there and open the door for that fifth team from the SEC to make it, especially if one of these middle of the pack teams make a run for it late in the tournament and have a couple good wins. So it's going to be exciting. This is March Madness is a lot of fun, but there's a lot that goes into it beforehand, and we're really starting to heat those conversations up. Kentucky's got the week off, so everybody will be back to having the same number of games played with 11 games with 5 left to play, 3 weeks left in the SEC after this week, and then the SEC tournament. So, it's going to be an exciting time for the SEC basketball. March Madness is around the corner. So look for a lot more heated discussions here on the SEC Sports Roundtable. As we do every week, we're going to close things out, and as promised, we're going to be shorter than normal. So we are going to close everything out with an open mic. John, is there anything in particular, sports, non-sports, you'd like to throw out there? Any way that people can follow you personally if they'd like to see what you have to say?
Yeah, sure. You can go to Jon_Schultz, SCHULTZ. At
now,
Twitter.
Is that with an H or without an H?
Without an H, just JON.
There we go.
_Schultz. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
And
for a name like John, you would think, that's a common name. But how many ways can you spell it?
Yeah,
so
it always gets spelled wrong. So does my last name. I think in terms of we didn't get on this, but I think another team. It's going to be interesting what happens again, bringing this back. But Missouri next year, you don't really count them yet as SEC team. But what are they, 4 in the country?
They lost, didn't they? They were
1-1 this week. Yeah. So I think that's going to be interesting moving forward. How that all plays out. Especially in
they played Baylor, did they not? And lost to Baylor yesterday. So
no, they beat Baylor. But they lost somebody. They lost to somebody. They went 1-1 this week.
So either way, that's a loss on them. I can't remember who it was. I'll see if I can find it.
But yeah, I'm just just in general just looking forward to the tournament to get started. I want to see how the SEC tournament plays out. I think there's a lot of good games that are going to happen in these last couple of weeks, especially in the SEC. We went over all the scheduling stuff. As a Tennessee fan, it's going to be interesting to see how the Vols finish out, and that's pretty much it. That, and then you have the tournament, and sometime in the middle of there, you'll have the combine. So I think all those things, got some good sports to look forward to on the TV.
Well, here's Missouri's schedule right here. They're 23-2, so they've got 2 losses. This week they played. They beat Baylor, and I could have swore they.
I thought that they lost it. Okay, so they beat Baylor in Oklahoma.
So there we go. They've had 3 wins in a row in the month of February. So, but still 2 losses from them. So they beat number 6 Baylor. That's what it was. That's where I was going with that. So a rambling for nothing. But yeah, no. So you've got another team that's going to come in and really take up a spot there in the bracketology for the SEC. Well, as always, you can follow me on Twitter at pshanebailey, Bailey. I don't think I've ever spelt that out. I guess there are more than one way to spell my name. But if you'd like to follow me, feel free to do that. Again, we don't always necessarily talk fully sports when we throw out tweets on our personal accounts. So if you just like to hear what we have to say in general, we'd love for you to follow us. Not saying we don't want you following us on Twitter, but just giving you that warning. You know, what I recommend is it's easy to follow and unfollow on Twitter. So come check us out, see what you have to say. Looks like next week's roundtable is going to be back to full strength. Going to have some folks out on the west side of Williamson County, for those who are familiar with the geography. So we'll be taking this over to Drew's house to do the podcast over there, I believe. So we're going to have, I think, Chad Caldwell and Brett Young on the podcast, if I remember correctly. So hopefully, get some more good conversation. John, I want to thank you for coming out here and doing this podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Shane, again.
Glad to have you. As always, we encourage you guys to follow us any way you can: Twitter, Facebook, iTunes, website. We try to throw it out there as many different ways as possible. With that, we're going to call this podcast done.